Welcome to Holy Ground Motherhood, a space for encouragement, reflection, and a reminder that the daily, ordinary work of motherhood is sacred and significant. I'm Julia Geiger, and each episode will explore the sacred in the messy, the holy in the mundane, and look for the Lord's work in the everyday moments of raising children. So take a breath, kick off your sandals, and let's walk together on this holy ground of motherhood. All right, everyone, welcome back to Holy Ground Motherhood. Today I am joined by Bethany Speer, mom of 3 boys. She is pretty knee-deep into the teenage years with all 3 of her boys. She is the wife of the pastor of my church. That's how we know each other. She serves on the worship team, entrepreneur extraordinaire, honestly. She has built her own business from the ground up and has really found her niche in what she loves to do. To start us off, why don't you give us a little bit of your story? Who is Bethany?
So I became a mom when I was 20 years old, already off to a great start, kind of crazy. And so I got married summer after my freshman year of college. I have 3 boys. They are almost 18 and then 13 and 12. I have always been a stay-at-home mom, although kind of like you mentioned, 10 years ago, I started my own business from home. So kind of getting to live both worlds of being a stay-at-home mom, but also building a business, bringing in an income from home. My husband is a pastor, so being a pastor's wife and worship leader and all of that. So
you were a little unexpectedly a young mom.
Yeah.
And what would you say were the biggest challenges of that season of being so young yourself and being like, okay, I have to figure out how to do this?
Yes, so many challenges. So I would say, obviously, at 19, 20, I am not established myself. I don't really know how life is supposed to go. So it's trying to figure out life for yourself while also raising a human being that you need to figure life out for as well. And so I would say a lot of learning as I went, which we all do that, but I think especially when you're that young and you really have never lived life on your own, done things on your own. And so it's kind of crazy to it's real crazy to look back at the fact that he's about to be 18 and really just how the Lord has carried us through that. When I look back now at how it all started, it almost doesn't feel real that's our story. Then obviously adding in a second and a third into that. And so I actually was done, closed my chapter of having kids when I was 26. Wow. So that's kind of crazy. And so I'm only 38 now and having all teenagers. And so, yeah, it's kind of a whirlwind of just figuring things out as you go.
That's awesome. I love that you talked about kind of the Lord bringing you through and where you are now, feeling like maybe when you were in that place, you couldn't have seen that you couldn't have seen the redemption that God brought through. Can you talk about that a little bit of what did he teach you? What were the ways that maybe he healed you and grew you in that season?
I would say, the times that we depend on the Lord the most is when we come to the end of ourselves. And so I think when I found myself in this place of, God, I need you. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm becoming a wife at 19. I'm becoming a mom at 20. And this just feels like too much. And so I think that's where I really learned full dependence on God. Also experiencing God's grace in ways that I had never experienced before. And Matt and I talk about this a lot. Before this happened to us, I probably would have come from a place of judging someone else in the same shoes. And so I think to the grace which you are needed, you are then able to extend. And so I think the Lord has used it just to help me to understand other people. And, it's just, we see other people sin or fall into these other things and we want to think that we're exempt. And then we find ourselves in that place and we're like, nobody's exempt, And so I think the way that the Lord just offered me grace and then really just continuously showed up. And I would say that's my story through all of motherhood. I'm really close with my pastor's wife growing up, and she also has 3 boys. And they all turned out just like so phenomenally. And I just remember thinking, okay, tell me exactly what to do. And I think I have just learned in the process myself that it is just like, as I have gone, like the Lord has just guided me in every situation. Every kid is different. Their personalities are different. What they walk through is different. And so it really is just that, like, learning to lean on Him, learning to let the Holy Spirit's voice and the wisdom that He brings guide you. And I think in that, as moms, and like I can't take credit for however my children turn out, hopefully good. I can't take credit for that, because it for me has just been this like full reliance in everything that I've walked through. Like, okay, Lord, show me how to respond, show me what my kids need, that kind of thing.
If there's a mom who's wondering, like, practically, how do I build reliance on the Lord? How do I build letting Him lead me and trust? Like, are there things that you recommend doing, like, or even in your own story where you're like, I did these things, or God kind of put these things in my life, and that built my trust in Him, that built letting Him guide me?
I can remember being a young mom. So I was raised in a Southern Baptist home, and I remember growing up, it was like, having your quiet time was like this thing, right? And it almost became like a box to check. And then it was like, oh, if I didn't read my Bible, I didn't have my quiet time, then I'm feeling like guilty and shame. And I remember carrying that into motherhood and finding myself in these places of like, okay, I'm supposed to spend time with God, but like, when, like, and there's nothing quiet about my quiet time. You know how it is. Like, you try to wake up before your kids, and then it's like, then they just all of a sudden decide to wake up. And so I found myself in this place of just frustration, guilt, shame. And I just remember like the Lord clearly bringing to my mind, pray without ceasing, and just feeling like Him saying, like, just talk to me, like, just talk to me. And that really, I mean, it changed my life, but it changed my motherhood, where my relationship with God just became this constant conversation throughout my day. So my reliance came from, I mean, my kids might be screaming around me, or I might be knee deep in laundry or dishes, and I am just like having this conversation with God continually. And so it just became, it was different. Like, our relationship became so different, because let's be honest, like, when we're sitting on our couch having our quiet time when our kids are still sleeping, I mean, yes, we need God all the time, but those are not the times when we need God the most, right? It's like when our patience is being tested by our children. And so learning to build that constant communication and conversation with Him as I was going about being with my kids is where I learned to rely on Him, because I just thought, in those moments of just like, okay, Lord, just help me regulate my emotions, help me to not explode. And so, yeah, I would say that's really how I kind of cultivated that.
So you are the wife of a pastor, and I feel like that comes with like a lot of stereotypes. Have you been intentional about how you show up specifically in that place that I feel like often comes with, like, it looks this very specific way, and you're not like the classic pastor's wife? Because I feel like you show up so much in you, and not like as your connection to Matt. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I think some of it is a personality thing. I have just, for most of my life, been unapologetically me. That's not to say that did not, have insecurities and things like that, but it's just like, I'm Bethany, take me or leave me. I do think some of what helped is we attended Bridgepoint just as like members there before Matt became the pastor. And so I think so many people knew me as Bethany before they knew me as pastor's wife. And so I think that helped a ton. And of course, now we've been at Bridgepoint for 10 years. And so the majority of people who are there now did not know me then. Early on, I read Jenny Allen has a book called Nothing to Prove. And I tell pastors' wives that I talk to all the time, it's probably the best thing that I read as a pastor's wife. And I read it 2 or 3 times. But just talking about like being faithful to who God has called you to be, what God has called you to, and you have nothing to prove to anybody else. Like I don't answer to anyone else but him and what he has called me to do. And so, yes, I'm a pastor's wife. I think I would say my main solid role is supporting my husband at home, like outside of church where he needs that support. But I've always felt like I am just like anyone else, and I come with my passions and my gifts. And so when it comes to things at church, I just have never felt, thankfully, from the congregation or my own expectations, like I am expected to, or maybe I am, and I don't pay attention to it, but to be a part of this or to show up for this. It's like, if I want to go to it, I'm going to go to it. Or if I feel called to be a part of that, I will, if it's something I'm passionate about, but never just this like, well, this is what a pastor's wife is supposed to be. And again, that's a little bit of my personality. Like I buck up against expectations. And I've loved it too, because I think sometimes I can talk to these pastors' wives, and it's just like, I can't imagine being so caught up in the, for lack of a better word, like politics or whatever of the church. And so I just like, I try not to. And having my own business too, honestly, has been life-changing, and even in my role as a pastor's wife, because I feel like I don't get too caught up in those things, because I also have my own thing outside of church that I pour into. And so I think that has played a role as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about Plexus. So that started out, I think I've heard, kind of your story a few times before, where you were like just trying it out, or I think maybe you used the products at first. And I think I remember you talking about this conversation with Matt, where basically you said to him, like, I think it's time for me to find my thing.
So because of our journey, the way that we started, Matt always knew he wanted to be a pastor. Because of how things happened with us, that journey took a little bit of a detour. And so kind of all of our marriage was like, how do we get Matt back on track to this role of becoming a pastor? And so, I mean, it took him 6 years to do his undergrad, then he did master's, all of that. And so when he took over as a pastor at Bridgepoint, I honestly found myself in this place of like feeling kind of lost, because I felt like we had worked together to get him to this point, and now this was his thing. Like, yes, I'm there to support him, but ultimately this was his thing. And so it's kind of like, now what? Like, what for me? And so I really felt like God was starting to stir something in me. Like I have something coming for you. Like I have a purpose for you. And to be honest, like I thought it was like, oh, Bethany's going to, run the women's ministry at church, which I was okay with, but that's just what I felt like. So I was like, this is coming from God. It must be traditional ministry. I went to Passion City, the Grove, their Christmas thing. It was the Christmas. So Matt became the pastor July 2015. In December, I went to that, and this girl, she could not find a seat anywhere, ended up sitting next to me, did not know her at all. After it was over, she was like, I know this is going to seem weird, but like God told me I'm supposed to pray over you. And I was like, okay. And so she started praying over me, and she was praying like these specific things that like the Lord had been stirring in my heart and telling me that he was about to birth something in me. And so that was early December. I joined Plexus at the end of December just for the products. And I knew that there was like a whole business side with it. I told the girl that I ordered from, I was like, I don't want any part of this. Like, I know how these little pyramid schemes work. Like, don't talk to me about that. Not even putting together, like God was stirring something in my heart. And then I happened to join this company. And then it just like so beautifully meshed together. Just kind of the way that he showed me like, this is what I have for you. And it is ministry. And it really has been such an incredible ministry, but like non-conventional ministry. So yeah.
That's great. So you were basically like, I'm going to try these products, but don't talk to me about joining this as a business. So 100%. Then when did that change?
So you can imagine so like I said, I've always been a stay-at-home mom. And so single income, ministry family, we always struggled financially. It was always a struggle, but my heart was to be home with my kids. And so it felt like this either or. I could be the one home with my kids and we're just always going to be stressed financially, or I could go to work and someone else could raise my kids, which was not my heart, not what I desired. And so, yeah, I just told like my mom, a couple of my friends, like, I'm trying these products out. I honestly don't really know what they do, but I know they're supposed to be good for your health. I'm such a great salesperson. I always tell people, I'm like, if I can do this, anybody can do this. And so, yeah, I just like, they ordered products through like a referral link that I got. And so my friend was like, hey, like, you earned like $300. And I'm like, I did what? And for us at that time, like $300 was massive, like, great extra margin in our budget. And so it just really opened my eyes. And I thought, you know, if I was going to go get a job somewhere, I'd have to learn how to do that. And so what if I could learn skills of like how to build a business from home while still getting to live out my desires to be home with my kids, to be present. And so, yeah, that's kind of where the shift went. And I just thought, this seems like an open door that I'm just going to walk through and see what happens. And so I just kind of went all in with it. And it became this like booming business that I truly never expected, being someone who never finished college, and really my only skills were being a mom. So
That's so beautiful and encouraging to mothers who are in that space. Moms were like, I don't know what's next or even what I could offer, because it's like motherhood is hard and it's good and it requires a lot of skills, but hiring managers don't necessarily always see it that way when they see a huge gap in your resume.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really beautiful that you found an opportunity to a way to provide for your family, like help contribute, but also that you loved.
Yeah.
Can you talk about when you started to realize like, oh, I really like this?
So the unique thing about what I do is, so we sell health products. And so it transformed my health. And then I saw it like domino effect, right? Like I'm sharing and I'm watching like my mom come off medications and friends, like all of these things, and I always say like the two main things I think people struggle with in life is their health and their finances. And then I'm also getting to impact and help all these moms make an income from home, like moms who were like me and desired to be home. Or even I have a ton of girls on my team who they have jobs, but let's just be honest, the economy is outrageous. And so who doesn't need extra money right now? But then it just, like I said, it turned into this incredible ministry. I just, over the last year, had a girl join my team who had no relationship with God. And she would get on our team calls where we prayed and we talk about the Lord and bringing the Lord into our businesses. And she was like, who is this? Like, who is this God that you talk about? And able to lead her to the Lord. And then like our business coaching calls also became discipleship calls. And so it's just been so neat. And that's where like my passion, where I always tell people, so with Plexus, our like thing we're known for is like pink drink, right? And so I always say it's so much bigger than a pink drink. Like there's just so much that God has done and the domino effect that it has had. That's made it just so much bigger than a business that I am. And I joke with people, I'm an Enneagram 7 and we have commitment issues. And so I always tell people, I'm like, if I am still in a business and loving and passionate about it 10 years later, like there's something to be said about that. And so it just has brought me so much purpose. I think like talking about being a mom, like there's no greater purpose than being a mom. But I think sometimes we can get lost in motherhood. And so many of us are like looking for some purpose to feel like us again. And so for you, it's like this platform. For me, it has been this, like, I love my children. But this was like, oh, there are adults I get to go speak to, or different things like that. And so, yeah, it really, I think, just elevated my motherhood because it lit something up inside of me. And then that overflow my children get,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it definitely seems like it's something that God has blessed, but also, I feel like whenever I look at your Instagram, it's like you're always reading a new like leadership book or, whatever. So if you want to talk about like, it wasn't just, okay, I'm going to do this thing and I'm just going to like try a little bit, like you go after it. And like, I think that contributes to your success.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you kind of took on of like, I want to get better at this. I'm going to pursue like even these disciplines or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So that has been all of my journey. I think the greatest work that you have to do is to work on yourself, not on your job or whatever it is that you're doing, because who you are is what shows up in everything that you do. And so when you start to, for me, I'm starting a business. Okay, I've never done anything like this before. I'm leading a team of people. Okay, I've never led people before. I don't know what I'm doing. And so it just becomes this like glaring, here's a gap. And, this is something that I need to strengthen. This is something that I need to get better at. And I used to I think sometimes we water down, like we're like, oh, self-help. Like we don't need self-help. And here's the thing is I just think it's gotten a bad name. I think, right, we're all made in the image of God. And I think we are all born with all of this potential. Sometimes we've got to scrape back the things to like work on ourselves to find that potential. And so that's what I would say, not self-help, I would call it personal development. And so where are the areas in my life that I need to sharpen and get better if I'm going to lead people? And the beautiful thing about it is it has not just impacted my business, like it impacts who I am as a wife and who I am as a mom. And so it really is just this recognizing the areas in your life. And then I think it's like, you have to know what you want. Like you have to, I always tell my team, like, know your why. Like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? And when I love the quote, I can't even remember who said it, but it's when the why is strong enough, the how becomes easy. Mm-hmm. And because you realize, okay, this is who I need to become to get where I want to go. I was probably the most undisciplined person that you've ever met in your life. But if you think about it as a mom, like when all you've ever been is a stay-at-home mom, I'm like, just reacting to what my children are doing. What are their schedules? And I'm flying by the seat of my pants. And so, becoming a morning person, had to become disciplined in that because it's like, when is my ideal work time? Before they wake up or maybe after they go to bed at night. So yeah, just different things where you recognize who do I need to become and how do I need to get better? And am I willing to become that person?
That's so cool because it's who you are and working on yourself as a person, then that ends up bleeding into everything rather than I'm going to work on this one box in my life.
Yeah.
So would you say like your other areas of discipline, like you work out pretty much every day without fail.
Yeah.
Would you say that that also is part of the discipline for that?
Yeah. I think everything that you become disciplined in, like overflows into another area of your life. And so for me, with getting my health kind of turned around, I'm super passionate about it, about, taking care of the bodies that God has given us. I also am very aware that moving your body is tied to your mental health. And so I tell people all the time, I'm like, I go to the gym more for my mental health than anything else. And I can tell such a huge difference if I miss a day. But yeah, I think, and then, because I think sometimes what we can do, and this is where I like go on a soapbox about like New Year's resolutions, is because we're like, January 1st is a magical day and we're just going to overhaul our lives and everything's going to get better. When I think habits are built like one at a time. And so I think for me, it was like, okay, what is one place that I want to get disciplined in? And I'm going to really hone in on that. And then like for me, working out has become second nature. It's just like, I wake up, I go to the gym. I wake up, I go to the gym. I just know it. And so then it's like, okay, what's the next area that I really want to get disciplined in? And so I think it's that taking one thing at a time, instead of like, oh, I'm going to, cut carbs and eat 1,300 calories a day and work out 2 hours. It's like, none of that's realistic. Yes. Let's just take one thing and get disciplined in that one thing. And then it builds your confidence too. Like when you do what you say you're going to do, you build this self-confidence. And it's like, well, if I was able to get disciplined in that, then I can get disciplined in this. And so it just kind of builds on each other, I think.
If you were to encourage a mom who, whether they're like in the little phase or, if they have teenagers and they're just like, I feel like I have no discipline. I feel like I have no direction. Like, where do I even get started? What recommendation would you make?
The first thing would be like pick one thing. So what's one thing that you want to cultivate and get better at? So let me use this for an example. Let's say you want to become a morning person. Okay. And let's say you're used to getting up at like 8 a.m. with your kids. That's not realistic. I know. I'm very far removed from the newborn stage, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. Let's say, and then you're like, well, I think when I start getting up at 5 a.m. and it's just like, okay, maybe maybe let's move things in like 15 or 30 minute increments. So for like a week, I'm going to start getting up at 7:30. And then next week I might move it to 7:15. And so just find things that are sustainable too. I think that's a really big part of it, because consistency is key for anything that you want to be successful at. Even if it's like the smallest little bit of consistency, anything that you can stay consistent with. And so, if it is wanting to move your body, it's like, okay, I'm going to commit to taking a 10-minute walk at night. Like, that's so doable, And again, like I said, when you prove to yourself that you can stick with something, and build your self-confidence to just go from there. So yeah, one thing at a time, and look at those areas that are really going to light you up as a mom, or benefit you as a mom, when we can get lost in our kids or in the mundane or in the day-to-day. I think finding those things that you're passionate about and that will light you up makes a huge difference.
You talked about you don't gain self-confidence by, like, for example, going to the gym and getting skinnier. Mm-hmm. You gain self-confidence by becoming the kind of person who goes to the gym every day. Mm-hmm. And so kind of using that to jump into, you are super passionate about the power of our thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I've heard you talk about that. So how did you first start to realize, like, oh, maybe my thinking really matters?
Yeah. So I found myself, I can remember it so vividly. I was on a women's retreat, and my youth pastor's wife, who I talked about, she happened to be our speaker that year. And I had just found myself in such a bad place, like with my thoughts, spiraling, like taking me places I didn't want to be. And so I went into her room one night, and I just kind of like opened up to her about all of it, because I'd been keeping it to myself. And she told me this idea of, when you have an overpowering thought, you need to meet it with an interrupting thought. So what can be your interrupting thought for this thing that you are struggling with, that when that enters your mind, you're going to interrupt? And she said, I've always, the Lord has always brought me to a specific scripture. And so for me, it was in the realm of discontentment, which is something that I battle as an Enneagram 7. And so I started praying about that and saying, okay, Lord, what would be my scripture? And so he gave me, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And so it started there. When I would find myself just discontent with life, thinking the grass was greener somewhere else, I would say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And I just started to repeat that over and over. And that one little thing, that's really where it started. And it was such a game changer for me that I just kept pulling at the string. Okay, there is something here. There's something when it comes to your thoughts. And about that time, Jenny Allen came out with her book, Get Out of Your Head. And I was like, oh, this is weird. I always joke that Jenny Allen and I are some weird wavelength, because I'll be thinking about something or passionate about something. She's like, I just wrote this book. I'm like, of course you did. So yeah. So then I just kept diving in deeper. And then I just became amazed with the science behind how God created our brains. And Dr. Caroline Leaf, she has a book called Switch on Your Brain. And I loved it because it married the science with scripture. The Lord says we're supposed to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, that it all goes back to our mind. And so I really took this to heart, and I was just like, okay, every circumstance that I come into, let me check, what are my thoughts on this? And learning how I can't control the thoughts that come in. Those intrusive thoughts are beyond my control, but I can decide, am I going to give it any power? Am I going to dwell on it? Am I going to believe that it's true? Or am I going to choose to find a truth to replace that thought with? And it truly has completely changed everything for me. I think what we don't understand is everything that from the time that we're born, our brain filters things as true and false. And so the longer that we believe something to be true, whether it's true or not, our brain filters it as truth. And so we can think certain things about ourselves, and our brain looks for evidence to tell us, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. This is what we've believed our whole life. And so you come to this point where I say, I'm 38 now. That's a lot of years of believing certain things. And so you have to like create your own new paths. And literally you rewire your brain. That's how it works. So I would say even let's talk about like launching a business. So for me, I got pregnant when I was 19. I never finished college. I had no work experience. There was nothing that says Bethany should be successful, right? Bethany should be able to run a successful business. And so I had to start choosing different beliefs about myself, that I was capable, that if God brought this to me, that God was going to give me everything that I needed, that I am a confident leader. Like, and the thing that I tell people is when you start this journey, you're going to feel like you're lying to yourself because your whole life you've believed these lies about yourself that your brain filters as truth. And so it almost feels phony, right? Like you're like, I am a successful businesswoman. It's like, no, you're not. Or I can be, And so it really is like you have to just, it's repetition. And the more that you repeat it, the more you start to believe it about yourself. And we operate out of what we believe. I think that's been the biggest game changer is like, who do I believe that I am? Which ultimately goes back to who does God say that I am? Not defined by the mistakes that I've made, not defined by my lack of, experience or like, what does God call me to do? And who am I going to believe that God is? Who am I going to believe that God says that I am? And when you operate from that place, it just completely changes the way that you show up in life in general,
What is something that if you had a chance to go back and tell, young Bethany with little kiddos, if you could tell her one thing, what would that thing be?
So I wish that I had gone to therapy. let's just say that. Here's what I realize about myself now that I would say I am not like perfect by any means, but a healthier version of myself than I certainly was when I was a young mom. And so just to put into perspective, my two youngest are 19 months apart. And that was definitely my hardest time of parenting. And one of them is a very strong-willed, very strong-willed. I was a very strong-willed child. I battled control so hard. And I could not control him, which made me angry, which ultimately was a me issue, not a him issue. And so when I look back now, I think we expect our kids to regulate their emotions and we can't even regulate our own. And so I think it's just like, I wish that I had learned how to regulate my own emotions, which I'm in therapy now and I'm learning a lot of these things now. And so I would say that like recognizing what is it in me that needs to change, because like your children are, they're 3 years old, right? Like our brains don't fully form till we're like 25 and we have these expectations for our kids to just like conform.
Like, stop crying.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes. And the truth of the matter is it's an us issue. Like, why does this like, drive me crazy? Why does this bother me so much? And so how can I look inward and say like, how can I, kind of fix that? And then a big one is just like learning to let go of control. Like I always say this about everything in life, like focus on the things that you can control in life, because it is a losing battle to focus on what you can't control. And so often we want to just simply control our kids. Like, why won't they do what, and obviously there's these, like, we're teaching our kids how to live. But what I have learned, especially as my kids are getting older, what you model is what becomes their learned behavior. And so for a lot of my really young, parenting, I parented very angrily. And I saw this, like, specifically one of my children, this anger, like, start to come up in him. And that scared me because it's like, this is learned, right? Like, everything with kids is a learned behavior, and he's learning that from me. And so if I don't regulate my emotions and show him and model that, he's never going to figure that out. And so I had to learn to like let go of control. What are the things that I can control? Ultimately, I can control me. And so what am I doing to control me that can model that behavior for my kids?
Do you have like a specific example or a story of I started modeling this and then like how your kids picked it up?
Yeah. So I would say, especially my one specific child who really struggled with anger, and he was the one that I was the angriest with because he was so strong-willed and I could not control him. And when I started to figure out how to control my own anger, which came through, reading books and working on myself, I noticed that shift in him. And even like to this day, over the last several years, the way that he responds to things that used to just set him off, like something didn't go his way or we said no to something, you can see this shift and it was just kind of this learning to not try to shut those emotions down, but like talk him through those emotions, like, or you're allowed to feel this way, but we don't act this way, But even in the simplest things, I think if you will pay attention to how you respond, I used to get frustrated at the dumbest things. I could tell some real embarrassing stories when my anger was out of control. And so now, like, if I can't figure something out, I think through my kids are watching. Like, what am I going to do out of my frustration of not being able to figure something out? And how are they going to pick up on that? And so I think it's just becoming aware of they're always watching, which is scary, but it's so true. And so, yeah, I think as I watch my anger and just different things shift, I slowly started to see theirs in the way that they handled their emotion shift too.
Wow. That's like equally encouraging and terrifying.
Oh, I know, right?
That like they pick up from what you do so much more than what you say.
100%.
And I think that like frees you to be like, you don't always have to like have the perfect thing to say, but it also is like, oh, but like who I am as a person matters.
Yeah.
Rather than
which I would say too, like going back to the whole like quiet time thing as a mom, like so often my quiet time became my kids like crawling all over me. I mean, I've had the same Bible forever and I have pages where they've been like, scribbled on, but my kids watched me. I have such a vivid memory of my grandmother growing up when I would spend the night with them. I would sleep in her bed and I would wake up and every morning she was in her chair and she was reading her Bible. And so it's like those things, even just, what we model, they grab a hold of. Like, I think that is discipleship is just like living it out, because the last thing that I want, like, I don't want my kids to say who my mom was at home was completely different than who my mom was at church or out with her friends.
You and Matt have this common phrase where you say, God first, marriage second, kids third. Can you talk about why do you live like that?
If God is not at the center of everything, it's not going to flourish and thrive, because we are very selfish human beings. And I come back to that all the time because I do lose sight of that. I mean, I am human just like anybody else. I can go on my paths of like thinking my way is better. And so if it's not anchored in that, it's not going to thrive. And then marriage, like I said, we got married 19 and 20. And even from the very earliest of years of being married, we have been very intentional with our marriage. Date nights, getting away, even if it's just like one weekend. Like literally, I think since our very first year we were married, at least one weekend a month we got away just by ourselves. And I know there are things that factor into that for people. We had very supportive family, and so that helped. But I think when your marriage is strong, it overflows in how you parent. Like, you feel like you're on the same team, right? And so often we say that to our kids when they try to come to one. Well, Dad said, I'm like, we're on the same team. I'm on his team. And, there's going to come a day when your kids are not at home anymore. And so if you've lost yourself fully in your kids and their lives and their activities, then you're left with nothing, when they leave. And so it started with the two of you. It's going to end up being the two of you. So I think it's important to remember that order of priority and importance.
So you talk about like the getting away and the date nights. Do you also feel like there is a way that you daily interact with each other that you're intentional about?
So right now we've kind of found ourselves in a season of like needing to bring more intentionality to our marriage. And so like we're going through a marriage book together. And our marriage counselor recommended these, I think he called them marriage walks once a week. And you take a walk and you go through these like 5 different questions. What do you have going on this week? And so you feel like you're on the same page. Well, this is what I have going on. This is how can I help you in like what you have going on this week? Like, how can I like show up? Where do you need me? Is there any unresolved conflict from the last week that like maybe we need to work through that's just sat like unresolved? All the questions hit on such main things that I think in marriage that cause the fall apart, right? It's so often miscommunication. And so when you're communicating, you're on the same page of this is what our schedules look like this week. This is how you could help me with that this week. Or this is what's still irritating me that we brought up last week, but we never fully resolved. And so let's just get all cards on the table and like get it, So things like that I think are really important. Just the daily intention, like Matt is very intentional, like always noticing me and like the things that I'm doing, how I look, even if I feel like I look like I'm a total mess. The text, the like just the little things, they add up and they matter. Maybe you're not in a season where you can like do a date night. When our kids were little, we would order, and if you know us, it's always Mexican food. We would order Mexican food to go. And after our kids went to bed at night, we'd have like our own little date night at home. And so it doesn't have to be some big elaborate thing, but just creating that time of intention. And I think too, like the more that I read and learn, like your marriage, the stability of your marriage creates stability for your children. And so just what I have learned and read about the importance of what kids see modeled through their parents and how it creates the security for them has just made me an even bigger believer in, the stability of marriage, like in being intentional in it. So
yeah, because that's cool. Because then they, like you said, it's like they catch what we model, and so then they're taking that into their future marriage, and it's like, hey, you're welcome, future wives and kids.
Right, exactly.
But that's awesome. I love that, like even just the intentional questions, because it's like how often do we not even know what we need unless somebody asks us like, how are you, or how can I help you this week?
But it's too like Matt's personality. So he's an Enneagram 3 and like he does not like to ask for help. And so he's just gonna like white knuckle his way. But if you take the time to say like, how can I help you? Then even for people who don't want to ask for help or whatever it might be that you struggle with, it creates the environment to like, okay, now I can, I can voice that, yes, I do need help here. Or yes, I am struggling with this.
Does that intentional relationship go then to your kids? Where are there specific things that you do with each kid to foster an intentional relationship with them?
Yeah. And some of it I think has just kind of happened. I used to have like intentional, like one-on-one time with each of them. Cause you start to get multiple kids and then it's just like, oh my gosh, like how do I keep up with all of them? And so like one big one, I remember Eli and I used to always go to, he loves Longhorn. He has always loved Longhorn. And we'd go have Longhorn dates, like just the two of us. Micah, he loves, and I don't even know how this started, but he is 13 years old, he'll be 14. And he still every single night wants to get in bed with me and like, can we watch something? He crawls up in bed, we watch something, and inevitably he falls asleep on me every single night. And so that's kind of become his thing. Aaron is more like he wants to do something with you. And so I think it's learning your kids too and their personalities and just like stepping into their space, like stepping into those moments with them, but making sure there's just like this intentional conversation. And something that I have loved is our kids, it's just always been open communication in our house. Sometimes where I'm like, one of them will come in and ask me a question because we're getting into teen years, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's okay, and it'll catch me off guard. But I'm also like so thankful that they feel comfortable enough to just come out and ask. I heard this at school. Like, what does this mean? I'm like, okay,
give me a second.
Here we go. Oh yeah, I have had some moments I could tell you. I just think like giving them your intentional time and attention creates this environment of, I feel safe with you. I want to spend time with you.
Is there anything else you want to talk to? Anything that's like burning on your heart?
I think that mom guilt is like such a huge thing. Ooh. And, we always feel it no matter what we are doing. Right. And so when I look at my kids and the mistakes that I have made or the things that I've done, and I just like want to encourage moms that just like pressing into the grace of God over all of your mistakes. You are going to make them. And I've made so many of them, especially, like I said, being a mom at 20, having no idea. Like sometimes I look at Eli and I just apologize, but I'm like, I was figuring out life at the same time, and I just think just knowing that like Jesus covers that, all of our shortcomings. But one area that we were talking about, pursuing something for yourself or like wanting this purpose out of motherhood. And I remember like almost struggling with that. Like, am I terrible that like I'm not just content like just being a mom, that I want something outside of it, that I'm seeking a purpose outside of it? And so I just wanted to speak to that because something that I found such comfort in was the Proverbs 31 woman. And when I look at her, and it talks about how she made fine linens and garments and she sold them, how she used her earnings to buy land and create a vineyard, but also took care of her household, and that her children rose up and called her blessed. And so I think for me, having my outlet outside of my kids, I could struggle with this. Am I not giving them enough attention? Which also is laughable because when I was a kid, it was like, I mean,
latchkey, go out.
Right, go out, see you at dinner time. You don't have a phone. I don't even know where you are. I'm not staring at you every second. And I do think we've created like idols out of our kids. I could go on a soapbox about that, but I just think about that. Like she was a hard worker. She was a businesswoman, and she also took care of her household, and her kids rose up and called her blessed. And so I think if that is something that you are struggling with in your season of motherhood, and again, I'm not saying that you have to have something outside of motherhood if that's not your calling, but I think the bigger thing is sometimes we can feel this guilt of, is it wrong that I want something else? And so I love having that example. And I always go back to that when I think about the business that I've built, but also just what my kids have learned through watching me build a business, the resilience, the hard work. On my Mother's Day card this year, Eli like specifically talked about that, like how much he just admires how hard I've worked and all that I have been able to accomplish. And so just knowing that. And so I just wanted to speak to that because I know for me, that was something that I struggled with. Like there's mom guilt in every area, but that was a really big one for me as I was building a business alongside of raising children.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely relate to that. I think they talk about having a creative outlet and how much that ends up contributing to your mental health and like how you show up in other places better because you have a creative outlet somewhere in your life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's such a beautiful encouragement to moms that it's like, whatever that creative outlet for you is, it makes you show up as a mom better because you're like,
Yes.
I'm full of life and I'm getting what I need and I'm getting my bucket filled.
Yes, for sure.
When you look back, where do you see Jesus most clearly in the everyday, ordinary moments of motherhood?
Those days where you feel like you're not seen. And I just remember like God creating moments of letting me know that I was seen, right? You hear people like, oh, I wish I could go back. I don't wish that I could go back. I'm just going to be honest. Like those years are precious and I love them. And, I see pictures of my kids when they were that age, but it was just so hard. Like it was so hard. And I'm never going to be that woman that is like, you're going to miss this. I mean, you will miss parts of it, but like that does not help anyone. Yeah, no. And when they're in the trenches, that does not help anybody. But I just think, it's so repetitive, right? It's the repetitive day after day. Like I'm feeding them, I'm fixing the same foods, I'm feeding them, and then I'm changing them again and I'm putting them down for another nap and like all the things. And I just remember having these moments where God letting me know, like, you are seen and what you're doing here matters. And one of my favorite quotes is, your greatest contribution to the kingdom of God may not be something you do, but someone you raise. And I think I took that to heart. Like I am raising kingdom changers, and that is purpose. I would say in those like mundane moments, just feeling the Lord like wrap his arms around me and letting me know that I'm seen. And that came a lot through that, like I was talking about earlier, just that like constant communication with him.
How would you encourage a mother to build her own village or support system if she doesn't feel like maybe her parents aren't around or there's not relationship there?
Yeah. I mean, the obvious answer for me is church. Like, and I was raised in church. And so I feel like that's where my community always was. Like my main group of friends were from my youth group, and same thing like through motherhood. But I also think like you have to be willing to create it. And, um, I think too often we play this victim card, like, nobody reaches out to me and nobody asks me if I want to go to coffee and nobody asks me if I want to have a play date. And it's just like, be that.
Yeah.
Like, create what you want to see happen. And, it can be just one person, like initiate a, hey, could we go out to coffee? Could we? And I get it. Like we want to be pursued, but we are all, especially in motherhood, like we all feel like we're drowning and then someone throws us another baby, right? It's like, I can't survive. And so sometimes the last thing on someone's mind is like, oh, let me text this person. We get offended very easily of I feel left out. Like people have this group and I feel left out. And so much of it too is just proximity, right? And so put yourself in the proximity of community. If you're feeling left out, those groups that formed, it's like either they live in the same neighborhood. So it's just practical, you know what I mean? They go to the same church. And so it's just practical that they create community there. They're in a life group together. And so that's where it forms. So put yourself in the spaces for that, and then be willing to be an initiator. And I know that can be hard for some people. I'm an extrovert, but that's even hard for me sometimes, because it's just like, I don't know, like, are they going to be my people? Like, are they, whatever, it's okay. Just put yourself out there and then you never know what will happen.
That's awesome. I love that. Is there a verse or passage of scripture that encouraged you during your season of motherhood?
Yeah. So Philippians 4:8, and it is whatever is pure, whatever is excellent, whatever is praiseworthy, think on these things. And it was my grandmother's life verse. It's on her headstone. And she always, and I'll never forget, it was specifically when I was pregnant with my first. And she was like, your hormones are crazy, all of these, like, don't make any irrational decisions. She was like, you have to anchor yourself on what is true, what is excellent, what is praiseworthy. And I've clung to that. And that's where we go back to our thoughts, right? Like what we're thinking on. And I think as a mom, like we can get into these places where life just feels hard or it feels never ending. And then we spiral, right? And so we start to dwell on this, like, oh, this is just my life. I just change diapers every day. And then I do this, and then the baby's screaming, and then this and this and that. And it becomes doom and gloom because we're spiraling. And so if we can anchor ourselves in, let me think on what is true. So let me turn these things that I'm complaining into, how can I turn that into gratitude? Like, I am so grateful that I have healthy children. I'm so grateful. Sometimes I say this as a joke. I'm like, I'm so grateful that my child feels so safe with me that he will throw an all-out tantrum because I am his safe place and he knows that he can and I will still love him. But it's just those little things that if you can learn. And I always say what you focus on expands. And I use the example, like when you buy a car, like before you bought that car, you probably never saw that car anywhere on the road. And then you buy that car and you're like, everybody drives the same car as me. It's because you're so focused on it. And the same thing goes with our thoughts. And so if we are focused on what is excellent, what is praiseworthy, what is true, we're going to see more of that and start to be able to cultivate more of that in our life.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bethany,
You're
for
welcome.
being my first in-person guest. Thank you. It was such a joy, and for your vulnerability and willing to share. Bethany is on social media. I will link that in the show notes. And so thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Holy Ground Motherhood podcast. My prayer is that you leave this conversation reminded that God is with you, even here, even now, in the middle of your ordinary moments. If this episode encouraged you, I'd love for you to share it with another mom who might need that same reminder. If you want to dig a little deeper, you can find scripture references as well as links to my Instagram page and YouTube channel in the show notes. Until next time, may you find holy ground right where your feet are.